If the critically acclaimed series Breaking Bad left you wanting more, then you absolutely cannot miss the show. This is Better Call Saul, the spin-off of Breaking Bad and arguably the most successful spin-off in the history of American television. In fact, Better Call Saul has, at times, surpassed Breaking Bad in ratings. The show's attention to detail is impeccable, just like Breaking Bad, and each character is portrayed with remarkable depth. Because Better Call Saul is still written and directed by the original cast, and many of the characters have also appeared in Breaking Bad, this continuity has allowed countless Breaking Bad fans to feel as though they have been transported back to the days of binge-watching the original series. Better Call Saul is set in a timeline that precedes Breaking Bad, and there is a strong connection between these two episodes. Better Call Saul mainly tells the story of how Saul Goodman gradually transforms from an ordinary lawyer, Jimmy, step by step. In Better Call Saul, Saul Goodman's existence is a crucial factor in Walter's expansion of his illicit business. The story goes back to 6 years before Walter meets Saul. At that time, Saul was just an inexperienced lawyer named Jimmy, without any clients, taking on hopeless public defender cases. Although he earnestly and seriously defends 3 young clients in court, the opposing lawyer doesn't bother saying a word, simply presenting undeniable video evidence and ending the case. Jimmy knew the case was unwinnable and was only in it for the defense fees. He mistakenly believed he would earn $700 per client, totaling $2,100 for the 3 of them. However, the court's policy was to pay by session, not by client. Seeing that he couldn't win the argument with the clerk, Jimmy stormed off in frustration. In the parking lot, just as everyone thought the white Cadillac was his car, Jimmy turned and headed towards an old, beat-up Suzuki that better suited his current status. But fortune had not completely abandoned him. Just as Jimmy stepped out, he received a call from an unknown number. It seemed his advertisement had worked, and he had a new client. Jimmy quickly adjusted his attitude, hoping his sincerity would impress the caller.
Law offices of James McGill, how may I direct your call? Yes, Mrs. Kettleman, so good of you to return.
Since he didn't have a proper office, Jimmy lied and said his firm was under renovation, arranging to meet the client at a downtown coffee shop. After hanging up, Jimmy couldn't contain his excitement. This was his first private case, which would pay far more than his public defender work. Afterward, Jimmy drives his Suzuki to the meeting. The car is a Suzuki Esteem, which means respect. This is also what Jimmy constantly craves throughout the series. However, as he prepared to leave the parking lot, he was asked to pay $3 for missing a sticker. The security guard, who strictly followed rules, was Mike. No matter how Jimmy pleaded, the stubborn Mike refused to budge.
Now you either pay the $3 or you go back inside and you get an additional sticker.
Fine, you win. Hooray for you. Backing up! I have to back up! I need more stickers! Don't have enough stickers! Thank you!
Take a look at the tires on Jimmy's Suzuki. Unlike Walter's spare tire, Jimmy's car has 2 extra spares. These initial events highlight Jimmy's dire circumstances. Jimmy arrives at a coffee shop to meet his potential clients. The Kettleman couple, Craig, the head accountant at the Treasury Department, used his position to embezzle $1.6 million, but Craig's wife, Betsy, insists this is just an accounting discrepancy and claims her husband is innocent. Clever Jimmy goes along with her words, stating that he also would not represent criminals. He advises the Kettleman couple to take the initiative. Hiring him as their attorney would be like having life insurance, and he warns them of the severe consequences of not having legal representation. After Jimmy's persuasive pitch, the simple-minded Craig is ready to sign the retainer agreement, making Jimmy salivate at the thought of securing the deal. But Betsy suddenly stops him. It seems Jimmy's eagerness to close the deal made the suspicious Betsy sense something was off. She excuses herself, saying she needs to pick up the kids, and postpones the discussion to the next day. Seeing the opportunity slip away, a disappointed Jimmy can only feign composure as he watches the Kettlemans leave. Determined to win them over the next day, Jimmy drives while maxing out his credit card to order flowers for the Kettlemans. He specifically requests the flowers to look expensive but be cheap, and most importantly, to include a heartfelt message. However, the vendor tells him the payment didn't go through, probably because Jimmy's credit limit is maxed out. Just as Jimmy is about to argue with the vendor, he makes a turn and accidentally hits someone. Frightened, Jimmy quickly gets out to check on the person. At that moment, Lars comes running from the woods with a video camera. Seeing Cal on the ground, Lars angrily berates Jimmy. Ignoring Jimmy's explanations, Lars immediately pulls out his phone to call the police. Panicked, Jimmy begs Lars not to call the police as he has an important client meeting. Lars saw Jimmy's concern and asked him what he wanted to do. Seeing that the other parties so easily give up the police, Jimmy then realized that these two guys just wanted to blackmail him. Then Lars gave Cal a wink. Cal then demands $500,000.
$500.
500 bucks. Ow, what the hell, man? Listen, Starlight Express, I'm gonna give you a 9.6 for technique, 0.0 for choice of victim. I'm a lawyer. Now, let's talk about what you owe me for the windshield. What?
After dealing with the scammers, Lars and Cal, an exhausted Jimmy returns to his office. His office is a storage room rented inside a nail salon. The law firm's name is simply printed on an A3 paper taped to the door. The first thing Jimmy does upon entering is check if there are any new voicemail messages from clients, but he is disappointed again.
You have 0 messages.
He then starts going through his mail, and one letter from HHM law firm catches his attention. He opens it to find a check for $26,000, sent by Howard, the owner of HHM. Even though Jimmy's situation is desperate, he doesn't hesitate to tear up the check. Jimmy then heads to the HHM law firm. His brother Chuck is a partner and the star lawyer at HHM. The M in HHM stands for McGill. Chuck McGill. Unfortunately, Chuck suffers from electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which means he can't be around any electronic devices. As a result, he hasn't been to the office in almost a year. His condition hasn't improved at all. During this time, Jimmy has been taking care of Chuck's daily needs. Jimmy wants Chuck to cash out his shares from HHM, which would get him around $17 million to ease his financial burden. Therefore, the $26,000 check means nothing to Jimmy. He sees it as a mere handout from Howard. Facing Jimmy's provocation, Howard remains unfazed. He knows that this is just Jimmy's idea and doesn't reflect Chuck's wishes. Seeing that he can't convince Howard, Jimmy threatens to take the matter to court.
And you will atone!
Previously, Jimmy worked in the HHM mailroom, doing odd jobs. As Jimmy is about to leave, Howard even asks him to mail some documents. This shows that Howard didn't take Jimmy's behavior seriously at all. Jimmy clearly has no intention of listening to Howard's orders anymore. Just as Jimmy is about to leave, he hears Howard mention the name of his potential clients. Jimmy carefully peeks around the corner and sees the Kettleman couple, which infuriates him. After leaving the elevator, Jimmy vents his frustration on a trash can. This scene is reminiscent of Walter taking out his anger on a paper towel dispenser. After Jimmy finishes venting, the camera slowly pans out to reveal the show's leading lady, Kim, making her first appearance. Their shared cigarette shows that there's a certain level of intimacy between them. Before Jimmy can finish his sentence, Kim already knows what he's about to say and tells him she can't help him. This shows the level of understanding between them. In the evening, Jimmy arrives at his brother Chuck's house. Before entering, he has to put all electronic devices in the mailbox. He also has to discharge any static electricity to avoid causing Chuck discomfort due to electromagnetic interference. All the wiring in the house has been removed, so they use kerosene lamps for lighting, and even the fridge is out of use. Jimmy has to use ice to keep Chuck's food fresh. Jimmy brings Chuck the latest newspapers, and Chuck insists on paying him. Although Jimmy doesn't want any compensation, he reluctantly takes a couple of bills at Chuck's insistence. Jimmy suggests that Chuck cash out his shares from HHM, but Chuck has no intention of doing so. He believes he'll get better and return to work. Chuck also says that cashing out would disrupt HHM's financial stability, causing most employees, including Jimmy's friend Kim, to lose their jobs. But Jimmy says he can't hold on any longer. Without clients, he has to take on public defender cases that no one else wants, and the pay is miserable. Chuck insists that this is one of the most valuable experiences for a lawyer, helping others, and that money isn't the issue. Jimmy immediately retorts that money is precisely the issue right now. Chuck advises Jimmy to be more patient. In the legal profession, there are no shortcuts. Do good work and clients will come naturally. Seeing that Chuck isn't getting his point, Jimmy declares that Chuck is now bankrupt.
I wasn't gonna say this, but you are broke. I can't carry both of us. I've been trying like hell, but I can't.
You think you have to provide for me? I never asked you that.
You didn't have to ask, okay? I've been doing my damnedest, but the day of reckoning is here. Soon, Chuck, you're gonna be out on the street with all the electromagnetism in the world raining down on you. Now please, please picture that, then tell me that money is beside the point.
Seeing Jimmy's concern about money, Chuck quickly brings out a stipend that Howard just sent, explaining that it comes every week, but Chuck doesn't want to accept charity. He says that once he gets better and returns to work, he'll pay back every penny. Jimmy reacted with a rush of concern, asking Chuck if he had left his mobile phone in the letterbox by the door when Howard arrived. Chuck believes Howard would have done so and didn't remind him. Chuck always reminds Jimmy to leave his phone outside. This shows that Chuck is biased against Jimmy. Jimmy said that Howard was teasing Chuck, but Chuck reacted in a very emotional way.
I'm going to get better! I'm going to go back to work and I'm picking up where I left off!
Jimmy has to apologize to Chuck. Chuck then brings out a matchbook left by Howard. The matchbook features an ad Jimmy made using his full name, James Morgan McGill. Since the M of HHM is the name of his brother McGill, Howard was not happy with Jimmy's behavior and he thought Jimmy was rubbing off on his firm. An innocent-looking Jimmy argues, saying that just because HHM has an M, he can't use his own name in ads. Unexpectedly, Chuck also suggests that Jimmy change his name, calling it Basic Professional Ethics. He even says Howard will pay to redo Jimmy's matchbooks.
Jimmy, wouldn't you rather build your own identity? Why ride on someone else's coattails?
Hearing this, Jimmy leaves in a huff with his phone and keys. Although he was very upset by Chuck's words, he didn't resent Chuck for it but transferred all his hatred to Howard. The next day, Jimmy decides to strike back at Howard. He teams up with the scammers, Lars and Cal, and learns that their highest daily earnings from scams are $600. Jimmy offers them $2,000 to stage another accident. The target is his recent potential clients, the Kettleman couple. Jimmy wants to steal the clients from Howard. He instructs Lars and Cal to remember the couple's car and plan the time and place for the scam. After the staged accident, Lars will pretend to call an ambulance as a signal for Jimmy, who will then act as if he's just passing by. Lars and Cal must pretend not to know Jimmy. This sets the stage for Jimmy to play the hero and win the clients over. After setting everything up, Jimmy hides and watches. He keeps rehearsing his lines in the car. Seeing the target clients about to leave, Jimmy quickly notifies Lars and Cal to get ready. The two are excited, already smelling the money. When the car reaches the designated spot, Cal skillfully throws himself in front of it. Seeing Cal on the ground, Lars rushes over to confront the driver, but what they never expected was that the other party did not have the slightest intention to get out of the car, but instead stepped on the accelerator and fled the scene. At that moment, Jimmy is still rehearsing his lines. When he got a call from Lars, he learned that the hit-and-run driver had fled the scene. Jimmy tells them to stay put and wait, unaware that they've secretly followed the car. Jimmy says hit-and-run is a serious crime, implying they could get more money. Hearing this, Lars and Cal abandon Jimmy, planning to keep all the money for themselves. Unable to reach them, Jimmy drives off to find them. Meanwhile, Lars and Cal have caught up with the car, but the driver isn't Betsy, it's an old Mexican lady. Unable to communicate in English, the lady invites them inside to get her grandson to translate. Jimmy quickly finds clues, seeing the skateboard and helmet on the ground, and the car's shattered windshield. Jimmy deduces that Lars and Cal are inside the house. He demands entry, claiming to be a lawyer.
Open up, officer of the court! Open up in the name of the law!
To Jimmy's shock, he's greeted by a revolver. The person who opens the door is none other than Tuco, the ruthless drug kingpin from Breaking Bad.